Good morning and welcome to the Accuterm 7.3 webinar. My name is Paul Giobbi and I'm the president of Zumasys. It's our pleasure to welcome you to this event today. We still have folks streaming in, so we'll do just some background before we turn it over to Pete Schellenbach. I wanted to provide a brief update on Zumasys. Some of you are aware of who we are, some of you are more familiar with Accuterm and not so much with us. But 4 years ago, we acquired a number of software companies within the multi-value space, and we wanted to share just briefly kind of an update on how we're doing in that quest and what it means to you, the customer. So we have a three-pronged kind of GUI strategy. Almost every PIC user wants to update the user interface on their system, and depending on the development profile of your team, there's options. Many of you are familiar with Accuterm GUI, which is built in for free into the Accuterm product. It's been around many years. It does a great job at what it's designed to do. More recently, we have been pushing RESTful services through a product that we bundle for free in our databases and offer for a modest fee in other multi-value databases, all of them. It's called MV Connect, and it establishes RESTful services for you. And we're seeing tremendous demand for that because it's database agnostic. We're not tying you into any product, and it's allowing you to put a true browser-based interface on your system without any proprietary tools or third-party interface. So I would kind of say Accuterm GUI is the familiar place that people have been for a long time. RESTful services with these new HTML5 interfaces is the end destination. And more recently, we found, though, that there was a gap in between those two, and we added Design Base, which has been around in the market for a while, but they have just revamped the product, and essentially it gives you the best of both worlds. It allows you to drive a web interface onto your PIC system, but through comfortable PIC commands. So we have kind of a good, better, best strategy in Accuterm, Design Based, and MV Connect, or RESTful services. And we encourage you to take a look at those online if that interests you. We also have a database strategy. Most of you love your database and aren't looking to make any change, but at the same time, there's functionality you might be looking for, or speed increases, or encryption, or you want a lower cost model, and we offer two products, OpenQM, which is about 75% less to maintain on an annual maintenance basis. Very powerful, agile database that evolves quickly and just wonderful. And we also have JBase, which runs your app in a native mode, so there's no virtual machine or VME or system to boot up. It runs natively in line with the underlying operating system. So if you ever find that you're looking to change your core database to appeal to younger developers or to solve some of these challenges, we encourage you to look at those two products. And we also have been acutely aware of the fact that there's a need to bring new development talent into this market and to just link people up with appropriate development talent. So we have built a team over the course of several years of very senior programmers. It's close to 25 people. This is a visual map of where they're based. We would encourage you to contact us if you need to supplement your existing team with some of these folks, either on a part-time or a full-time basis. But more importantly, we want you to know that we're making efforts to educate the next generation of developers. We're doing that through our products like RESTful services, but we're also doing it through a training curriculum we've rolled out with Ivy Tech Community College in Indiana that some of you may have heard about. We've gone through 2 semesters of training folks, and at our upcoming user conference, we will announce yet another strategy to teach young folks or folks that are new to PIC the basics of PIC Basic in a video format that we're going to do for free. So we look forward to sharing that with you. And on that note, we would love to have you join us at Zumapalooza. This is an annual customer conference that we started about 13 years ago. It has a combination of infrastructure information and PIC multi-value information, but it is the largest gathering of PIC users by an order of magnitude. There'll be about 500 people there, and at recent check, about 65% of the audience were multi-value users. So if you're interested in learning more about what's going on in the market, the catalyst that Zumasys has become to bring kind of excitement and energy and enthusiasm back to multi-value, I assure you it'll be a fun event for you. Registration actually is available for $25 through today, and then the hotel rooms are $130, but those go up on Monday due to the big UFC event in Las Vegas. So that's that on Zumasys and Zoomapalooza. Really want to thank you for attending this webinar. We're going to turn it over to the people that you really want to hear from, which is Pete and Pierre, and look forward to a great event. Thank you again.
Okay, hello, this is Pete. I joined Zumasys about 4 years ago as Director of Product Development, and boy, there's been a lot of stuff going on here since I joined. You know, the acquisition of JBase and adding Accuterm Mobile and just a whole bunch of stuff. So anyway, I'm going to talk about where we are with Accuterm, and then Pierre is going to talk about the phiReport, which is a tool that we bundle with Accuterm 7.3 and Accuterm 8 when you subscribe to a maintenance subscription. So I'm going to start with the Accuterm 7.3, Accuterm 8, and then one of the very cool premium features, ReZume, and then we'll turn it over to Pierre in a few minutes. So first of all, this is where we are and where we're going. Right now we're Accuterm 7 is at release 7.3a, which was released about 2 months ago. It's was mostly a bug fix release, but we did add a couple of very cool things. And we are in progress of Accuterm 8, slow but steady. There's there are 3 flavors of Accuterm 8. There's a desktop version, a web version, and a mobile version. The desktop version is going to have a nicer, fancier UI and several other cool things, which we'll talk about in a minute. The web version is a replacement for Accuterm Cloud or Accuterm Internet Edition, because right now about the only browser that supports that is IE, which even Microsoft doesn't like put on the front page of Windows 10 anymore. Basically, they've just the browser manufacturers have turned off support for the plugin technology that Accuterm Web or Accuterm Cloud was using. So we've got a whole new implementation of that. And then we've got an update for the mobile version coming. So Accuterm 7, the current release is 7.3a, and we added maintenance as a new feature in Accuterm 7, which is brand new to Accuterm since forever. So basically, by adding maintenance, we have a better revenue stream to keep development going for Accuterm, which is a good thing, because there's a lot of people that really rely on all of the awesome features that Accuterm provides. So with 7.3, we added some premium features that you get when you subscribe to maintenance. One is called ReZume Session Resilience, and we'll go into a lot more details in a little bit. And the other is called phiReport, and the basic version is bundled with the maintenance subscription. phiReport also has a pro version with a bunch of very cool high-end features. The concept is that it's a kind of a point-and-click dictionary-driven report builder for Excel plus all kinds of other goodies. So it's a very cool feature, worth the upgrade and worth you know, the maintenance subscription just on its own. The other thing that we did with 7.3 was we did a few bug fixes, and this, you know, nothing too exciting here. I don't know if anyone, I'm sure that people that out there with these fancy new laptops like the Surface Pro have noticed with the old versions of Accuterm that some of the windows don't always fill up their space. There's little artifacts left on the screen, little borders at the top or the right sides. Looks a little tacky, works fine, but it just is not professional looking. So we fixed that in 7.3. Then another thing that users had complained about, which is fixed now, is how to handle curly quotes when you're pasting from the clipboard. We've gotten a lot of complaints from users where they would copy and paste from a Word document and their quotes would turn into underscores. And so it was all kind of a result of when we adopted Unicode in Accuterm. The curly quotes are actually different characters than the normal quote marks, and there was just no equivalent in these 8-bit character sets that Accuterm has been using and most PIC applications use. There is not a a left open and a right open quote. So anyway, we've taken the same kind of approach that Microsoft took when they did clipboard work for going between ANSI, not Unicode applications, and Unicode applications by turning the curly quotes into straight quotes. So they don't show up as underscores anymore. There were 2 other small fixes, one with secure shell. One of the, there was a problem with interactive authentication. It's kind of an esoteric thing. Most people would never notice it, but it's fixed. And there was an annoyance with opening secondary windows in Accuterm, things like the web editor or the GUI designer or the file transfer wizard. They would sometimes open on the wrong monitor if you had a multi-monitor setup. Now they open on the same monitor that you start from, which is a little bit more pleasant for the users. So now this is a brand new announcement. We have a new update to Accuterm 7.3 coming out. Should be out next month. It's 7.3b, and it's just adding some enhanced encryption to Accuterm because we've got some feedback from customers saying that their settings on their servers were flunking their PCI audits because they had to enable SHA-1 hashing. Now, in the context of how Accuterm and SSH work, SHA-1 hashing probably is not really a security issue, but because it has come under attack lately, especially in the context of like cracking people's certificates that are signed with SHA-1, the auditors are like very particular about this, and they just want to see it turned off. So we have the 7.3 update coming out, which will do 256-bit SHA-2 hashing, and at the same time, the key exchange algorithm is supporting longer key sizes. Previously, we were only doing up to 1024 bits, and this new version will be up to 4096 bits, which is, in current technology, uncrackable. So those will be coming out very soon in Accuterm 7.3b. So that's pretty much it for Accuterm 7, and now we're going to go to Accuterm 8, and that's where all of the hard work is really being done now. Accuterm 8 is 3 components. It's a desktop version, which is just your standard Windows application like Accuterm 7 is. It's a web version, which is HTML and runs in any browser, and it's a mobile version for iOS and Android. One of the interesting things that we're doing with Accuterm 8 is we're introducing the Zumasys customer portal, and the portal will be a place where you launch the web version, and also it's a place where you manage your Accuterm licenses and your users. You would be able to add new users or change their permissions in the portal, and we'll be storing the Accuterm session profiles and something new called templates or roles, which is a template for an Accuterm session that you can clone for other users. So you can set up power users and admin users and restricted users and whatever classifications that you think you need that customize how Accuterm will work for that class of user. And because we're storing all these things in the portal, the profiles that you use can now be shared between the desktop and the web and the mobile version. So if you set up a profile for desktop that contains your, say, your function key programming and your your color preferences and where the toolbar sits and things, you'll be able to open that same profile in the web version to the extent that those things are supported in the web version, and the same in the mobile version. So once you have your profile set, it's shareable between all the flavors of Accuterm 8. So Accuterm 8 Desktop, this is the update to what we see in Accuterm 7 Desktop, being a typical Windows application. Will include the same premium features that Accuterm 7.3 has, the ReZume session resilience and the phiReport basic. File transfer is speeded up, which a lot of people have asked for. It's like, well, we have a TCP connection, how come it's so slow? Yeah, so we're working on that. One of the cool things that's being added is a way to use WebSockets to connect to your multi-value server. And we'll talk more about WebSockets when we get to the web version, because that's all you can use there. But to be consistent across the platforms, we're supporting WebSockets on all 3 versions, the web, mobile, and desktop version. And we'll be using the same server-side component to accept the WebSocket connection and do the proxy to either an MV telnet server or to a standard Linux command. We'll talk more about the WebSocket stuff in a minute, because that's kind of a cool new thing. Other goodies in Accuterm 8 Desktop are improved SSH encryption. So beyond what we're doing for 7.3b, we're also going to be adding, well, actually, it's already done. Elliptic curve using Diffie-Hellman key exchange, which is all the modern talk in the cryptography world. Actually, there's like one particular curve that everybody is like, oh, this is the greatest curve in the world. Who knows why, but this is, yeah, I guess because the NSA has nothing to do with it. And updating the hashing again using 256-bit and 512-bit hashing algorithms. So super encryption in Accuterm 8. We've also updated the user interface so that we keep our tabbed interface like you have now, but you can also drag a tab off of the main window into a separate window, and you can have multiple windows with multiple sets of tabs. So just a bit of a modernization of the user interface. And as I said on the previous slide, there are templates now for setting up like roles for users so that you can assign users different roles, and that's carried into the desktop version. So Accuterm 8 Web. This is a replacement for Accuterm Cloud or Accuterm Internet Edition, and as I said, we're really getting a hit on that because the browsers are turning off the plugin technology that we use, which has served us really, really well. It's worked just beautifully in the past, but since Chrome doesn't support it, IE does support it, Edge does not, Safari does not, so and Firefox does not anymore. So the replacement is a pure JavaScript and HTML5 website, web app. It'll run in all the major browsers. It'll run on phones and on tablets. The access to the web version will be through the Zumasys customer portal. The connection settings, what you would normally keep in your .acf session file, will be saved in the customer portal so that they're ready to go as soon as you log in. The Accuterm web version will support all the same emulations that you're used to, though, WISE 50 and 60, adds Viewpoint, all the VTs, and PC Monitor. So what you're used to being able to do on the desktop will work the same on the web version. It will include session resilience, although on the backside it's going to be using WebSockets as its server piece. Including, we will eventually include phiReport with the web version, although at the initial version will not support it because it doesn't have Accuterm GUI yet. So once we get Accuterm GUI added to the web version, then phiReport should work with it. Simple scripting will be added, which is kind of a watered down version of VBA, just enough scripting to be able to get to Accuterm settings and properties, and do simple things with the Accuterm object that you can do with the desktop version. It will not allow you to do things like start up Windows programs and call functions in DLLs and things. That's just not possible from a web browser. The connection from Accuterm Web back to your host machine will be using secure web sockets. Because browser security is pretty tight, we cannot make a direct network connection, so you will not be able to do a telnet or SSH. But because the WebSocket runs over TLS or SSL, it's secured with the same level of encryption that secure web pages HTTPS uses. So Accuterm 8 Mobile is an update for the current Accuterm mobile version that supports iOS and Android. There's several new features that are being added. One is secure WebSockets, so that we'll be supporting that on all three flavors, desktop, web, and mobile versions. We're going to add key-based authentication to our SSH implementation on the mobile version, which has been asked for. Right now, the mobile only supports password and something called interactive authentication, which is a lot like password. So the key-based is a stronger, more secure way of authenticating. The authentication part is how you identify who you are to the host. So instead of just putting in a password and a user ID, you'll put in a password to unlock your key. And the key will be used to tell the server who you are. It's way more secure. And so that'll be in the mobile version for 8. Again, session resilience with ReZume, which will make the mobile product actually a little more useful in a real world scenario where you might have to switch from Wi-Fi to 4G to maybe 5G someday, and so your network connection is opening and closing on the fly as you move around. Normal telnet and SSH connections would just go away. ReZume should keep that open for you. One feature that users have asked for quite a bit is to be able to use the camera on a phone or tablet for scanning barcodes. So that's going to be built in. We'll add scripting, as we're talking about doing for the web version, just simple macros, not a full-blown VBA. Again, we have the restrictions in especially iOS where scripting is just frowned upon or just not allowed at all. So very simple things like accessing the Accuterm properties and invoking simple functions. And along with GUI coming to the web version, we'll have GUI in the mobile version. So that is just, I can't wait till that's done. That opens up a whole new world. Because then you'll be able to design simple little web apps using Accuterm GUI that work really nicely on a small device. Okay, I said I would come back to the web sockets a little bit, and just wanted to go over what's involved here. The main reason that we're adopting this is because with the Accuterm Web being a browser-based implementation, the browser does not allow the web app, which is basically JavaScript running inside the browser, access to a network connection to the network devices, to TCP, to anything that low level. I mean, basically you get to do an HTTP request and recently a WebSocket connection, which is kind of like a TCP network socket connection, but not all the way. But the fact that it's supported in all major browsers, and it has a secure flavor, so you run it over a TLS or SSL, which really TLS is what we're going to, connection, means that it's a secure connection, and it's not being HTTP. It's different than the AJAX style where you would poll and and wait for an answer and then poll again and wait. It's an actual socket connection, which is like a full duplex. I can send and you can send at the same time, and we'll both keep up with each other. So it's a nice implementation, and all browsers use it. The particular way we're using it with Accuterm Web and Accuterm Mobile and Accuterm Desktop, for that matter, is that we're running the actual Telnet protocol tunneled across the WebSocket connection. And that has a couple of advantages. One is that the Telnet protocol is designed for terminal interactions, so it understands things like break keys and that kind of stuff that you might want to do, where a standard socket connection would not have any clue as to what those things are. You'd have to design some kind of a special way to handle those. So those are kind of already built into Telnet, and we just basically run the Telnet commands over the WebSocket connection. On the server, we need to run a utility there that accepts the incoming WebSocket connection. Actually, it starts as an HTTP or HTTPS connection and then it upgrades into a WebSocket connection. When the connection starts up, then we use our little utility as a proxy to relay that connection to a normal terminal session, like a Unix TTY connection. Or in the case of a Windows server, we can connect as a proxy to the Windows Telnet server. Then this is pretty useful, because the other ways to connect to multi-value Windows implementations, like using a console interface, have a lot of problems. I don't know if people have tried some of the SSH servers on Windows, and with Accuterm, a lot of things will not work. Scripting usually won't work, and it's because the console becomes the terminal emulator. So you have a terminal emulator talking to something that's acting like a server that's talking to another terminal emulator that's talking to it gets very messed up. So by going directly to the Telnet server that each of the multi-value vendors provide, we're going as close to the actual multi-value database as you can. As I said, the WebSocket connections, when you use a secure WebSocket or run over TLS, that gives you your encryption. The one pain point here is that in order to run TLS or HTTPS, which this is how this starts, the server that you connect to has to have a certificate. And you can mint your own certificates. A lot of people do that. The problem there is that the browsers are a little bit persnickety about using self-signed, home minted certificates. They really want to see a certificate that comes from a certificate authority, and the browser vendors keep tightening that up. So we're supporting something called Let's Encrypt. It's an organization that has decided to make SSL TLS certificates free and easy for anyone. So we're actually working on developing a way to automatically install the certificates from Let's Encrypt and renew them when they expire. So the server-side certs should be pretty painless with this technology, and free. Of course, if you already have a domain with a certificate, then this should just fit right in and you don't have to do anything special. But I think most people adopting this will need to acquire a certificate. The other neat thing about doing WebSockets to a multi-value database on Windows is that because of the lack of usefulness of most SSH servers on Windows and the insecurity of Telnet servers on Windows, this gives us a way to easily provide secure connections to those databases. Those have always been kind of a pain in the past, because what do you use? VPN is probably the most common answer right now, but that's not a simple thing for the users to use. It'd be much simpler if you could just connect in from the browser or from the mobile device and not have to start a VPN first. So by using WebSocket Secure, we go directly in through our little component that runs on the server and into either an OS command or into an MV Telnet session. So cool technology coming with the WebSockets. So this brings us to our first premium feature in Accuterm 7.3, and that is ReZume. So what is ReZume? ReZume is a way to insulate the application running on the server from the network connection that connects it to the client. Right now, and this is just how life has been, these sessions that are running the application on the server are designed to run through terminals, and terminals are a persistent connection. You're using either Telnet or SSH typically, and coming up WebSockets. And these connections on a network run over TCP. TCP is a network protocol that tries its best to route things the right way and ensures that the data that goes between the two sides is correct and never loses anything. But if TCP has a problem sending a packet to a server, after a while it gives up and the connection closes. So if a network failure occurs, something like a cut cable, a router that reboots, who knows what. There's so many points of failure now that we're connecting things over the internet, and who knows how many places they stop in between. When TCP detects one of these failures, your connection is gone, and the application eventually gets notified that there's no connection here, and it typically just shuts down or just hangs. So the problem that we're trying to solve is how to maintain your application state on both sides of this connection when the connection is unreliable. Not terribly unreliable, but periodically you'll get a little burp, and you want to not have to lose your work. So if the application detects that the connection's gone down, then usually it has to be wrapped up, and sometimes it won't do it itself. You'll have to get an admin in to log it off. Sometimes you'll have file locks that are stuck and other resources that need to be freed up, and it's just causes a lot of frustration for users and extra work for admins, and we just wanted to solve it. So that's what ReZume is. ReZume uses a small server-side utility, kind of like what we're talking about for WebSockets, but in this case, it's not WebSockets, it's relying on SSH. This utility provides that insulation between the application and the network. So when the network has a problem, when a network failure is detected, the network side of this little application says, oh, look, he's got a problem, we'll wait for him to come back. But it never passes that information on to the actual application. The application just thinks he stopped typing. So it sits there, waits for something to reconnect. When the network becomes available again, which usually is a short time. I mean, typical cases, we're talking seconds to minutes. There's a way to reconnect in Accuterm called ReZume, and when the two sides reconnect, there's a little handshake that's done, which resynchronizes the state of the client and the server. So you end up with no lost data. Everything that you were sending from the client to the server, as keystrokes you might have typed, end up being sent to the server, even though the network was down when you clicked them or sent them. The same going the other way. If the server's in the middle of displaying a report to your screen or doing some other transfer, maybe updating the screen, that is saved in this little utility that sits there on the server until the ReZume happens, and then resynchronized back to the client exactly where it left off. So I would normally like to do a live demo of this because it's kind of fun to see it happen in real life, but I have a little problem doing a webinar on a network and unplugging my cable to illustrate a network failure at the same time. So because this is a webinar, I can't really do this live. So I have a few screenshots to show what it looks like. It's not so impressive unless you actually see it running live. But in Accuterm 7.3, if you have maintenance enabled, then there's a new category in our settings tab called ReZume Session Resilience under the connection settings. When you click on that tab, the ReZume pane opens up, and in that pane there's a checkbox that just says, do you want to do this? So you can turn it on or off. And there's a little drop-down list for the buffer size. So remember I said that when the ReZume occurs, the two sessions do a little handshake and they synchronize their states to match what they were when the connection broke. So that requires some buffering on both the client and the server. You can choose a buffer size, or you can just let ReZume choose its own. I think its own size is fine, but some people have complained that sometimes it stores too much. So anyway, you're allowed to adjust that. Once you've made this setting change, you need to log off and log back in so that the session starts in its resumable state. And otherwise, you would notice no difference in using Accuterm. It would be exactly the same as a normal, not resumable session. So what happens when the network burps? This little reconnect window you're probably familiar with, except for the button on the left, in this case says reconnect and resume. When resume is not enabled, it would just say reconnect. So reconnect means just open up a new TCP connection to the host and pray for the best. Reconnect and resume opens up a new TCP connection to the host, but it's able to locate the saved session using that little server-side utility and reconnect your new TCP connection to that same application that's running. And then it does its little handshake, and your session resumes exactly where you left off. So in this case, it's going to come back to whatever you were doing. And notice at the bottom now it says that we're connected. So we didn't have to log in again. We didn't have to do anything. Everything just picked up right where it left off. So ReZume is available as a premium feature in Accuterm 7.3 and Accuterm 8, and requires an active maintenance subscription. And we're going to talk about maintenance at the end of the webinar, because that is also kind of a new thing. And after, I think this is pretty much the end of my part of the presentation. I'm going to pass it over to Pierre now to talk about the phiReport, which is another premium feature that comes with maintenance in Accuterm 7.3. So I give you Pierre.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon. Thank you, Paul and Pete, for having me here today. My name is Pierre Trinephi. I'm the president of 3.5 Solutions, and we are the author of phiReport. So in the next few slides, I'll briefly introduce you to phiReport product. Okay. So what is phiReport? Well, first, phiReport is not a data extraction tool. It's an Excel workbook worksheet builder. And what that means is with phiReport, you get to create real Excel worksheet and workbooks. And it's not just a data export type mechanism that you've probably used many times over the years through different database options or even through Accuterm. So phiReport has an easy-to-use GUI interface that lets you build queries using your existing dictionary items. You can create Excel reports. You can save them as PDF or some other file formats as well. You can save them to your local machine, or you can also print them to any Windows printer that your workstation knows about. phiReport doesn't know anything about your PIC printers, but it knows everything about your Windows USB printers or network printers, anything that your workstation can print to through Windows. The basic version of phiReport is included with Accuterm 7.3 and 8 for people who have the the maintenance contract. And for those who require the advanced features of phiReport, we have a professional version, which allows, in addition to the features of the basic release, the ability to email report, create reports from TCL commands, and from a simple basic API. The Pro version also includes a dictionary management tool, which allows you to control how Excel outputs certain data columns, and it also allows you to create Excel formulas from your dictionary items. And optionally, the Pro version can also be used to define JSON or OData schema, but that requires additional services. Okay. So this first screen here is showing the dictionary editor or manager, what we call the data view manager. What it allows you to do is create data views of your data files. A data view is an alternate way of presenting your data fields. And in most cases, they are simplified versions of your data fields. What that means is, in general, it's very difficult to create queries from many PIC files because there's a lot of dictionaries, and many of those dictionaries are either redundant or no longer used. And because these applications, a lot of these applications are 20, 30 years old, most people don't know what all those dictionary items are used for, and you don't want to delete them because they may be used by some other application. So by creating data views, you only expose the dictionary items or the fields that you want to use in your reports. Data views can also be used to set Excel data types and justification, field length, which become column width in Excel. You can set the fonts, the font style, font type, color, size, background, and all those properties of cells in Excel. Other features like in the sheet control, you can define Excel formulas. Now, in Excel, when you create a formula, you would type equal, the equal sign, and then you would enter a cell coordinate or click around the cells, and it would show you something like equals E5 times F5. Now, because you don't know where your data is where your column is gonna end up on Excel, what we use here in phiReport is we use the dictionary names within curly braces, like you see on this picture here. So we do an equal curly brace quantity times curly brace sales unit price, and when that gets rendered into Excel, it gets converted into the appropriate coordinates where those columns end up on the Excel sheet. Okay. The data views are non-intrusive, and what that means is when you create your data views, we do not update your existing dictionary items from your actual file. We don't delete them. We don't change them. We don't create new ones in them. We do all our work outside of your PIC file. So if something goes wrong, your applications still, they don't get affected. Okay. You can create as many data views as you want for each PIC file. And what that allows you to do is it would allow you to create a view for certain types of reports. And you can create as many types of report as required based on the type of file and the type of report you want to create. So once the data views are created, you would use phiReport Builder to create your reports. This is the report builder environment. And the way this works is you select the data view from the data view drop list over here. And you pick a data view, and that would list all the fields that you've defined in your data view. So once you've done that, you can select, check whatever fields you want to use in your report. And through this data field table here, you can also define the order of how the columns will be displayed, which order they will be displayed on the report. You can define how the columns are sorted, by descending type sort. You can define or select which columns will have a total line or subtotal lines. And you can also define the group bys or the pick break on command for your report. The criteria field or the criteria area, which is this area over here, allows you to create your select statement. So in standard pick statement, you would do select file with, column 1 equals whatever. This is what you would do here. You don't type anything. You just create through this click interface. You select the field. You select the operator equals, less than, contains, and the value that you're looking for. The value could be hard coded, so you can type it in. It could be a prompt for the user. It could be coming from a program. So that is, all available in the criteria area. Then once you've done, selected the fields you want to display, selected or build the selection criteria, you can click on the preview button, and that gives you the preview of what type of data is going to display in the report. The preview feature only selects a sample size of data, because if you have a very large file, and as you're building your report, you don't want to sit around for your 200,000 whatever columns to come back. So by default, we do a sample size of 200, but you can change that to 50, 1,000, or whichever number you like. The builder also allows you to add parameters to your report. We don't have an image for that here, but basically the parameter tab would allow you to add headers and footers. If you're familiar with Excel, you can add header, left, right, and center footers, and left, right, center headers. Those can be defined in this tab directly from your report. The data that can be displayed in there are whatever Excel supports. So for example, you could use an %date or %d that would display today's date, T for time, N for number of pages, P for page, for current page, etc. So you can use anything that Excel knows about, because it's Excel that is going to render your report. It's not pick. But we've added new shortcuts for the pick guys, things like %user, which would display the user that's logged on, that's actually running the report. In the parameters, you can also define pre and post query processes. What those are they allow you to run a process, and the process can be a basic program, can be a TCL statement, like another select, a get list, or whatever you can run in TCL. The pre-process will run that command and then pass the result to your query. And the post process is the same thing, but after the query. So you run your basic, or you run a pre-process, select basic program or anything you want. Run your select statement, your report that you've defined here, and then you do your post process, which could be some cleanup processes, or maybe you want to save the list, you want to run other programs to do whatever you need to do after the report is done. Okay. So once you've defined all those things, they stick with the report. So every time you run the report, it will follow those rules and apply them as it runs. So you don't have to repeat that process every time you run a report. The next tab here is the output tab, which again, I don't have an image for. What this allows you to do is it allows you to select how this report is going to be outputted or rendered. By default, we open Excel and then we show Excel. But you can save the XLS or XLSX file, depending on the version of Excel you use. You can save it as a PDF. You can save it as a PRN for printer processes. You can save it as HTML. Okay, and if you save it as PDF or Excel, you can also select to email it to whoever you like. Okay, so the email feature basically has two features. Has two options. You can email using your Outlook if you use an Outlook on your workstation, or you can use an SMTP server. The difference is, if you use Outlook, it will allow you to choose which account of Outlook you're going to use to send the email. I think most people have at least, well, probably more than one email account in their Outlook or whatever email client they use. So you can choose which account the email is going to be sent from. And when phiReport sends the email, that email actually ends up into your outbox. So it's not some server somewhere that sends the email and you never know about. It's actually in your outbox. Okay. And then the last tab here, the raw data tab, what this allows you to do is it will show you the statement that it's actually going to run when you click the preview button or the Excel button. Okay. And from this raw data tab, you can execute the command, you can modify the command, and the output will be the exact same output that you would see if you were running it in a Telnet session. If you use things like by exploding, break on, total, and all that stuff, you would see everything as you would normally see in a standard TCL statement. So it's a good tool to quote unquote debug your statement. Sometimes you run a statement and the dictionary has say a translate, and the translate file is missing. If you run the preview, phiReport may not detect that. It's going to come back and say there's no data. But if you run the raw data, it will do a capturing of your command, and it will display it in the raw data tab. So you'll see why that report returned no data. So the next thing here is this Excel button. When you click Excel button, what it's going to do is it's going to run the report. It's going to run your select statement. It's going to capture all the data that you've selected or the columns that you've selected in the display field, package the whole thing, send it from PIC to your workstation, and build the Excel sheet. The next two buttons are the JSON and OData buttons. These would allow you to create or to preview the JSON and the OData output format. We can talk about those in the next session, I guess. So the next thing you do here, okay, the supported format. Now basically, here we support anything that Excel supports. Excel by default, starting with version 2012, I think, has built-in PDF rendering output. So if Excel supports it, phiReport can do it. And by default, Excel supports all these formats that you see here, XLS, XLSX, HTML, TXT, and so on. Because we use Excel as the rendering engine, we can produce anything Excel can produce. It's the same thing for printers, because we use Excel as the rendering engine for printers. If Excel can print to it, we can print to it. So that's pretty straightforward. Okay. The builder that we've just looked at is basically designed for report designers, for advanced type administrator users. You can go in there, create reports, modify them, delete them. You can do anything you want with them. that's not necessarily what you want your end users to use to run their report. And so we have this phiReport query program, or GUI program here, which is meant to be used by the end users, the non-technical users. They get to see all the reports that are available to them, because as the administrator, when you create a report, and if you have security turned on, you can indicate or tell the report who is allowed to run a certain report, and we get to that in a minute. So this environment is a simple, it's basically it's the runtime of the phiReport. The end user selects the report, enters the prompts, if any, click on the preview to see the data if they want, or just click Excel. And when you click Excel, they get this dialog which pops up, kind of like a print dialog, which allows them to select how they want to send this or produce this report. By default, these options will be pre-selected based on how you've created your report originally. But they can go in there and say, oh, you know, I want to print it, or I want to send an email, and so on. So they can all overwrite the output format if they want to, but by default, it'll already be set for them. So all they would have to do is click Excel and build report. For more advanced users, what we have with phiReport is the ability to run reports directly from TCL. So once you've created your report through the builder, you can go to TCL and run the RPT run verb. And what this allows you to do is it's going to allow you to run any report. And if the reports have prompts, you see that the prompts show up below here. And what this allows you to do that the other two that we've looked at, the builder and the query, doesn't allow you to do is RPT run will allow you to run multiple reports. So for example, here it asks you enter name of report to run. You enter the report name, okay, you press enter. Then it's going to ask you the same thing again, enter name. So every time you enter a report name, you stack it to the phiReport engine to be, you instruct it to run those reports at the end of the prompts. So on the last prompt, if you press return, you don't enter a report name, it's going to start doing its processing. And what it would do is it's going to run all your reports. Each report is going to end up in a separate sheet. So this is multi-sheet reports. Each report is going to end up into its own sheet, all the sheets into one workbook. And it's going to bring that Excel workbook up for you with the 3 or 4 sheets that you've defined. You can also save it as, if you do a save as, it will save the workbook with all the sheets in it. And then you have the option to email the workbook if you want to. For the developers, we have an API call. It's a single subroutine call, which allows you to do the same thing that RPT run does, which is the TCL access that we just talked about. When you call this subroutine, you pass it a few parameters as defined here, and you can pass it. You pass it a multi-value list of reports. If it's a single value, it's a one sheet. If it's a multi-value, let's say you pass 5 of them, 5 values, that would create 5 sheets in the workbook. Okay. And then you have the options to save it, print it, email it, and so on. Okay. And again, back to TCL for the advanced users. This is really for the real advanced users. What we've we've added 3 new verbs. And I'm sure it's going to sound familiar. The Excel-assign, which works like the SP assign, except that instead of using pick printers, it's going to use Windows printer. And the features of functionality is pretty much the same. You set the default printer, the Windows printer that you want to print to. You can you can define a number of copies to print if you want to, just like SP assign. And to run the report, you would use Excel sort or Excel list. And it works exactly the same as the sort and the list verb, except that instead of outputting to the screen, to your terminal, it's going to create an Excel sheet or a PDF or HTML, whatever you want, based on the extensions you want to save it as. Okay. We haven't talked much about the security features of phiReport, but by default, we turn it off. UAC stands for User Access Control. If you turn it on, you can lock, or you can protect access or limit access to the phiReport programs like the builder, the query, the configuration program. You can lock access to categories of report, to data view. So if you lock a data view, every report built from that data view will be locked automatically. You can go down to the report level where you specify here execute, update, and delete privileges for each report. Okay. So all these features are built in the Pro version only. And lastly here, you can use phiReport to create JSON and OData schemas. You can click on those two buttons I've talked about earlier to view the output, what the JSON would look like if you were using these through the REST services. And finally, this is the table that displays the different features of the three editions we have. The light edition is the free one. When you install phiReport, that's what you get. It's the light version. It's free, and it doesn't require maintenance or anything, but it's very limited in features. The basic allows you to create Excel PDFs. It won't allow you to email, for example, or the API is not available, the TCI access is not available, and the data views are not available. So with the basic edition, you actually create your Excel reports directly using your own dictionary items. And the Pro version is the full version that has all the features. You can get a 30-day free of the Pro version for any of these supported platforms. So we support JBase 5.6 and above. There's D3 7.4 plus, QM, Universe, and soon Unidata for Windows and Linux. Okay. So that's it for me this time. We'll have a follow-up demo webinar later this month or later next month. So stay tuned for some announcements. And thank you for attending, and I'll pass the microphone to Corey. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Pierre. We're just wrapping up. So now the question becomes, how do I get the new version of Accuterm 7.3? And I'm going to go through this fairly quickly, and then any questions that you have, we can send to Jill. So existing Accuterm 7 customers can access these new 7.3 features by subscribing to maintenance. Accuterm 7.3 does include ReZume and phiReport Basic, and then upgrade for Pro. And then maintenance does include a free upgrade to Accuterm 8, which is what Pete went over at the beginning of the webinar, which will include the desktop plus the browser and the mobile. And look for additional details for the upcoming webinar with phiReport Professional. The annual maintenance price, here's a sampling of what it looks like. And again, all these questions can be directed to Jill O at Zumasys.com, so Jill Orsini. And Jill Orsini will be following up with each of our first 200 attendees to get information from them to send the t-shirt. And if you have any questions about what we covered over today's webinar, please send those to Jill and she'll coordinate and make sure that we get some answers for you. Again, thank you all for taking time out of your day to go over this with us. And we look forward to sharing some exciting news in the upcoming months to come. And don't forget to register for Zoomapalooza. Thank you all so much. Take care.